On my mother's 64th birthday, I made her favorite lemon butter salmon. I even baked a peach tart from scratch. As the candles flickered on the table, she lifted her wine glass, looked straight at me, and said, "Avery, the best gift you could give me is to leave my life." The room froze. I blinked once. Then again, I stood up, quietly, smiled like I didn't just hear my heart snap, and walked out. But she had no idea what I would do next. My name is Avery Walker. I'm 36, and for over a decade, I lived like a ghost, inside my own life. I left graduate school at 26 to take care of my mother after her fall. I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. She was all I had. That's what I believed. But she knew that too well, and used it. Every day. What I didn't know at that table was her birthday toast wasn't a joke. It was a mirror, one that finally let me see myself. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I disappeared. But not the way she wanted. Before we continue, I just want to say this. If you've ever felt trapped by someone you love, or made to believe your needs come second, this story is for you. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you're ready to hear what happened after I walked away from the woman who raised me. Because disappearing didn't break me. It built me. People always talk about mothers like they're this sacred, untouchable force. Like, no matter what happens, she's still your mom. But what if your mother is the reason you stopped recognizing yourself in the mirror? Before that birthday dinner, before the wine and the silence, before she told me to leave her life, I had already been disappearing. Slowly. Not physically, but piece by piece. It started 10 years earlier. I was in grad school, pursuing my MFA in painting. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet. But for the first time in my life, I felt alive. I had a tiny studio apartment filled with canvases and the smell of coffee and turpentine. I was dating someone who saw me, really saw me. And then the phone rang. "Your mother's had a fall," the nurse said. She slipped on black ice outside her porch. Fractured her hip. Needed help at home. And just like that, I packed a bag and drove back to Eugene. It'll just be for a few weeks, I told my professors. But I never went back. Ellen, my mother, barely thanked me. She simply nodded and handed me a list of medications and grocery items. That was the first sign. I didn't notice it then. I told myself she was in pain, scared, adjusting. But the truth is, she had waited for the perfect moment to reel me back in. I moved into the spare bedroom. I gave up the studio, the brushes, the relationship. Everything paused so she could keep going. And at first, I didn't resent it. I thought that's what good daughters do. She always had a way of making you feel like helping her was your idea. Like she was being generous just by letting you stay. "You don't have to stay forever," she'd say. But every time I brought up leaving, she'd mention something: her blood pressure, the stairs being too steep, how tired she gets walking to the mailbox. So I stayed. I took a job at the local library because it was close to home and gave me flexible hours. I cooked for us, ran errands. She began refreshing the house, which meant painting over everything I loved. The soft yellow hallway became a sterile gray. The bookshelf I built, from reclaimed wood, replaced by a glass cabinet she said looked cleaner. The chair I bought with my first paycheck gone. She called it tacky. I let it all slide, because it was easier than fighting. Our rhythm became predictable. She'd make a suggestion. I'd agree. She'd dismiss something I liked. I'd pretend it didn't matter. I convinced myself it was still home, even if it didn't look like mine anymore. The funny thing is, you don't always notice you're vanishing when it's happening slowly. You rationalize it. You tell yourself you're being practical, selfless. But that's not what was happening. I was folding myself into her life, tighter and tighter, until there was no room for my own. My friends stopped asking when I'd come back to the city. My phone rang less. I stopped painting altogether. What used to be dreams became vague memories I didn't want to explain anymore. The final straw wasn't one big event. It was hundreds of little cuts. She made passive-aggressive comments about my clothes. She mocked my art phase like it was a childhood hobby. She used my savings without asking, saying it was for shared expenses. Every time I tried to create a boundary, she laughed. "You're being dramatic." "Avery, you always were." And I believed her. Until that birthday night, the one where I cooked everything perfectly, set the table with her favorite flowers, invited the people she liked, wore the dress she picked out, and still she told me I was the dead weight in her life. That was the moment I stopped defending her in my head. That was when the silence finally felt like clarity. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen, coat still on, watching the tart go untouched on the counter. All those years, all those choices, gone. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't cry. I didn't spiral. I opened a blank page in my journal, held the pen in my hand, and just sat there. No words came. Not yet. But something had shifted. It was like my body had known the truth for years and was waiting for my mind to catch up. That's the thing about manipulation. You don't see it until you're on the outside looking in. And now, I was finally outside. Not physically yet, but mentally, emotionally, I had taken the first step. I didn't know it then, but that quiet moment in my kitchen was the start of everything that came after. I wasn't going to be edited out of my own life anymore. And Ellen Walker, she was about to learn what it feels like when the daughter you dismissed for years finally starts writing her own story. It's strange how silence can feel louder than shouting. After that birthday dinner, the house grew quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of quiet where you feel like something is watching you, like the walls are holding their breath, waiting for your next move. Ellen didn't bring it up again. She didn't apologize, didn't ask if I was okay. Instead, she acted like nothing had happened. The next morning, she hummed while folding towels in the laundry room. She asked if I wanted pancakes. Left the paper open to the crossword we usually did together, but I didn't play along. I responded politely, but distantly, and I started noticing things. The way she paused when I didn't jump to help. The way she hovered in the doorway longer than necessary. The nervous glances. Something had shifted in her, too. But unlike me, she didn't like it. One morning, she knocked on my door with a tray of burnt toast and oversteeped tea. "I figured you'd be tired," she said, voice sweet. "We haven't talked much since." She trailed off. "You mean your birthday?" I asked, not looking up. She blinked. "That? Oh, come on. Avery, it was a joke. I was tipsy." "People say things." I nodded, still not making eye contact. I didn't open the door wide. I didn't invite her in. And for once, she didn't push. I think that's when she started to get nervous. Because for the first time in a decade, I wasn't trying to fix the distance between us. And then came the discovery that sealed everything. Later that week, I went to the bank to update my mailing address. Simple errand. No big deal. The teller typed something, then frowned. She pulled up a screen and leaned in, eyebrows tight. "There have been some small transfers," she said. "Nothing alarming, but regular. From this account to another checking account." She turned the monitor slightly. Over $6,000 moved, bit by bit, over the last year. My name was the only one on the account, or so I thought. She was still listed as an authorized user. I hadn't even remembered adding her. Probably did it years ago, when she was sick, and I thought it would help. I didn't say much, just nodded, scheduled a follow-up with a manager, and left. The air outside felt heavier, like it knew what I'd just learned. That night, I didn't wait. I found her in the laundry room, folding towels again. I saw the withdrawals, I said. She straightened slowly. What are you talking about? My bank account. You've been transferring money. Thousands of dollars. Without asking, she rolled her eyes. You're overreacting. It was for the house. Repairs. Medications. Groceries. Your car. You never asked, I said. You wouldn't have minded. She snapped, eyes narrowing. You always said we're in this together. God? Avery, you're being so selfish. Selfish. That word hit harder than the money missing. Because for years, I had erased myself just to keep her comfortable. And now, setting one boundary, one made me the villain. I didn't respond. I just walked past her, upstairs, into my room, and I locked the door. Not because I was scared, but because I was done explaining. The next morning, something unexpected happened. There was a letter in the mailbox. No return address. I almost tossed it, thinking it was junk, but the handwriting stopped me. Neat. Careful. Slightly slanted. I opened it slowly. Dear Avery, I hope you don't mind the letter. I don't want to intrude, but I've watched from my window for a long time. Not to be nosy, just to bear witness. I've seen what you carry, what you've given, how you disappear to make others more comfortable. You are not invisible, and you are not wrong. With quiet admiration, Elaine Sanders. Elaine lived 2 doors down. We'd spoken maybe a dozen times in 10 years. Always polite waves, quick hellos. And yet she had seen me more clearly than anyone. I read the letter 3 times, then tucked it into the back of my journal. Something about it felt sacred. It didn't fix anything, but it steadied me. It told me I wasn't imagining things, that I wasn't crazy, or cruel, or ungrateful, that what I felt was real. And it gave me just enough courage to start planning. Not revenge, not really, but freedom. 'Cause until then, I didn't know how trapped I was. Now I did, and I was ready to do something about it. The day after I read Elaine's letter, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a mug of tea I never touched. The silence in the house felt different now. Not heavy like before. Not sad. Clear. There was no screaming. No confrontation. Just stillness. And in that stillness, I realized something simple, but devastating. I had been edited out of my own life. I hadn't made a single decision that belonged solely to me in almost 10 years. I grabbed my journal and wrote it down. I have been edited out of my own life. I stared at the sentence for a long time. It felt heavier than any insult Ellen had ever thrown at me. Because it was true. And now, it had a name. That morning, I made a list. Not of chores, not groceries, but everything Ellen had access to. Joint checking account. House deed. My personal passwords. Scribbled on a notepad by the phone. Old documents I never bothered to update. I circled the ones that needed to change first. Then I opened the filing cabinet and started digging. Bank statements. Insurance papers. The will she asked me to sign without reading. I stacked everything neatly, then picked up my phone. I didn't call a friend or a therapist. I called a law office 2 towns over. Small, quiet, barely a website, but something about the name felt solid. Martinez and Owens. Family law. A woman answered. Martinez Law. How can I help you? Hi, I said. I need to remove someone from joint financial access. and I need help reviewing property documents.
Let me connect you with Gabriel, say,
She replied. He's our lead on that. I booked a consultation for the next day. That night, I didn't sleep much, but I didn't spiral either. My mind paced, reviewing every time I should have spoken up, every time I let something slide because it felt easier. The next morning, I opened a new page in my journal and wrote a single question at the top. What's mine? The rest of the page stayed blank for a while. Slowly, answers started coming. The house, technically, it was under both names, but I was the only one making the mortgage payments these past 6 years. The money in our joint account, I earned it at the library. I managed the budget. She spent it. My time, my energy, my creativity, all mine, all taken. And I was finally ready to reclaim them. I met Gabriel Martinez at his office on a gray Thursday morning. He was calm. No sales pitch. No judgment. Just listened. When I finished explaining, he said something I'll never forget. You don't need a war. You need a boundary that holds. He guided me through the next steps. Freezing joint accounts. Updating the house deed. Revising my will. Filing a notice of separation and financial independence. Everything was clear. Legal. Quiet. No drama. No threats. Just paperwork. But for me, every signature felt like a declaration. I wasn't just protecting my assets. I was writing myself back into the story. Back home. I made small changes. I stopped reminding Ellen of her doctor appointments. I didn't ask what she wanted for dinner. I cooked for one. Ate in silence. When she commented on my clothes, I didn't react. When she hovered in the doorway, I didn't fill the space with nervous chatter. She noticed. I could feel her watching me more closely, like trying to read a language she no longer understood. A few days later, she knocked on my door again. We need to talk, she said. I opened the door just enough to see her face. She looked tired, but not in a physical way. More like confused. Like the rules had changed, and no one told her. You've made your point, she said. Now undo it. It's not a game. I told her, there's nothing to undo. You'll regret this. Maybe, I replied. But at least this regret will be mine. I closed the door, locked it, then sat on my bed, heart racing not from fear, but from something else. Clarity. 2 days later, the official notice was delivered to the house. Signed, notarized. Irreversible. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She packed. I heard her dragging a suitcase across the hardwood floors early one morning. Heard her voice muttering sharply as she called someone to pick her up. A car idled out front. She slammed the door. Then silence. Real silence. Not the kind that's tense and waiting. The kind that breathes. That afternoon, I walked through the house alone. Some picture frames were missing. A few drawers left open. But the walls, the windows, the bones, still mine. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just stood still, letting it settle. And then, almost without thinking, I opened every window in the house. Let the air move through. Let her scent leave. I wasn't escaping anymore. I was returning to myself. After Ellen left, the silence didn't roar. It settled. Like dust after a storm. The kind of silence you don't fill with noise. Because you don't need to anymore. I stood in the middle of the living room, the morning sun stretching across the floorboards, and whispered out loud, just to hear my own voice. And then I started moving, not in a hurry, not with bitterness, but with intention. I dug through the attic and pulled out the painting of wildflowers I tucked away 5 years ago. The one Ellen said looked too chaotic. I hung it above the fireplace. I changed the hallway light bulbs to warm tones, took down the gray curtains she insisted were modern, and let the windows breathe. One quiet Saturday, I climbed into the attic again and pulled down a quilt my grandmother had sewn decades ago. Navy blue and olive green. The stitching still soft under my fingers. I spread it across the couch. That night, I lit a candle, drank chamomile tea from a chipped mug Ellen once called junk, and for the first time in years, I left the bedroom door open while I slept. Not because I had to, but because I could. Freedom didn't look like fireworks. It looked like this. Stillness. I started slow. I didn't try to reinvent myself. I wasn't chasing some brand new identity. I was dusting off the one I'd buried under years of compromise. And oddly enough, it began with charcoal. 2 weeks after Ellen left, I signed up for an art class at the community center. It was the same class I used to sneak glances at in my 20s, back when I'd walk past the building, too busy or too unsure to step inside. The first day, I sat near the back, sketchbook on my lap, hands stiff with hesitation. The instructor, a woman named Callie Morgan, smiled at us with silver-streaked curls, pulled into a loose bun, and paint smudges on her sleeves. "We're not here to be good," she said. "We're here to begin." I hadn't drawn anything real in over a decade, but my fingers remembered more than I thought they would. Lines became shapes. Shapes became texture. And somewhere in the second class, I caught myself humming under my breath. That surprised me. I hadn't made noise just to fill space in years. No one in that room knew my story. They didn't know about Ellen, or the birthday toast, or the years I'd spent trying to make someone else feel whole while I shrank. They only knew the way I smudged with my thumb, the way I tilted my head while shading. And that was enough. I started bringing sketches home, quiet portraits of hands, trees, and once, a single daisy. I framed them, hung them in the hallway. Each one felt like a small flag I was planting. This is mine. And this, every day. The house looked less like hers, and more like me. One afternoon, I rearranged the furniture, moved the reading lamp to the other side of the couch, painted the guest bathroom a soft sage green, cooked meals that I liked, not meals I thought Ellen would approve of. One evening, while slicing apples for a crumble, I caught myself smiling, and then laughing, out loud, alone. It was such a strange, small moment, but it felt huge, because it wasn't performative. It wasn't for anyone, just me. That night, I wrote in my journal, I'm not building a new life. I'm remembering the one I left behind. And then the phone rang. I let it buzz 3 times before picking up. Her voice came through the receiver thinner than I remembered, but unmistakable. "Avery," she said. "It's me." I didn't say anything. "I'm not well," she continued. "The doctors found something. I thought you should know." I stayed quiet. She sighed. "The kids ask about you. They miss you. We all do." That one word hit harder than anything else. It always did. Because for Ellen, we was a shield. A way to wrap herself in others so her actions couldn't be isolated or questioned. "I'm sorry," she added, her voice softening. "I said things I didn't mean. This house doesn't feel right without you. None of it does." I looked at the daisy sketch on the wall. The way the light hit it differently every hour of the day. I took a breath. "I'm glad the kids are okay," I said. "And I hope you're getting the care you need." She hesitated. "So, can we talk? Maybe I could come by. Just to see you." I closed my eyes. "I can't go back to being small," I said quietly. "Just so you can feel big. A sharp inhale. Wounded. Or angry. I couldn't tell. So that's it, she said. That's it. She hung up, and the silence that followed felt like peace. The next morning, I stepped into the backyard with a trowel in one hand and a packet of lavender seeds in the other. The soil was dry but soft, the kind that welcomes change. I planted them carefully. Sage along the fence line, lavender closer to the porch. I didn't rush. Each handful of dirt felt like a promise. And when I stood to stretch, the light across the yard had shifted to gold. The breeze moved through the trees, and for the first time in years, I could hear the world without a filter of tension. I stayed out there until the sky turned dusky blue. Later that evening, just before I closed the kitchen window, there was a knock on the door. 2 little girls stood at my front steps, maybe 7 or 8. One held a small basket wrapped in a kitchen towel.
Hi.
The taller one said shyly, "These are from my mom." The younger one added, "She says your garden makes her feel brave." I blinked.
Well, that's very kind.
I said, crouching to their level.
Tell her I said thank you. They giggled.
Then ran off, laughter trailing behind them like ribbons. Inside the basket were 2 muffins, still warm, cinnamon apple. I didn't eat one right away. I just stood there, breathing in the quiet. Later, I lit another candle, sat on the couch with my journal, and wrote one line. I thought disappearing would break me, but maybe I was never meant to be seen by them. Maybe I was meant to see myself. For a few days, it was quiet again, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I was settling into my new rhythm. Early mornings in the garden, late nights sketching by the window, laughter during art class that I didn't feel guilty for. And then the storm came, not from the sky, but from the phone. It started with a voicemail from my cousin, Janet. Her voice was tight.
Rehearsed.
"What's going on over there?" Ellen called me. "Said you've frozen her out. That you're treating her like a stranger."
Avery?
"That's cruel." Then came the texts from neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months. Passive-aggressive concern wrapped in smiley emojis. "Just checking in.
Heard some things. Hope you're okay."
And then the blunt one from a neighbor who always sided with Ellen. "You always talked about boundaries. But this? After all she's done for you." I turned my phone face down and let it buzz itself into exhaustion. I didn't answer. I didn't defend myself. Because I wasn't interested in managing their version of the story anymore. And more importantly, I didn't owe them clarity. But Ellen wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The banging started early one morning. Sharp, deliberate knocks on my bedroom door. "You've made your point," she said. Voice clipped. "Now undo it." I opened the door just enough to look her in the eye. "This isn't a stunt, Ellen," I said calmly. "There's nothing to undo." Her jaw tightened. "You're going to regret this." "Maybe," I said. "But at least this regret will be mine." I closed the door, locked it. And this time, I didn't feel nervous. I felt sure. 2 days later, the paperwork was official. A notice delivered to the house. Stamped. Notarized. Final? By the end of the week, she was gone. No goodbye. Just the sound of dragging luggage across the hardwood. A car engine outside. And a slammed door. I waited a full hour before going downstairs. The living room looked suspended. A few picture frames missing. A junk drawer left open. But the structure, the soul of the house was still here. And for the first time, it belonged fully to me. I walked through each room slowly. Not mourning. Not even celebrating. Just noticing the sunlight on the floor. The softness of the couch quilt. The way the daisy sketch above the table caught the light like a clock marking a new kind of time.
No more second guessing.
No more negotiating space. This was my home, my story, my air to breathe. But even as I moved forward, the ripple effects kept coming. Some subtle, some sharper. A former coworker from the library ran into me at the farmer's market.
I heard about your mom,
she said.
Hope she's doing okay.
It wasn't the words that stung, it was the look. The implication that I had abandoned her. And maybe that's what some people will always believe. Because they didn't see what happened behind the closed door. They didn't hear the 1,000 little ways I'd been erased. They didn't live it. I walked home that afternoon with a basket of vegetables and a head held higher than usual. I no longer needed the world to agree with me. I just needed to keep choosing myself. And every day, I did. Sometimes in big ways, like changing my last name back to my grandmother's. Sometimes in small ones, like drinking my coffee the way I like it. Not the way Ellen used to make it. One morning, while replanting herbs near the porch, I saw Elaine Sanders standing across the street. She waved. I smiled and walked over. She didn't say much, just handed me a brown envelope. Inside was a watercolor sketch of my house. Soft, thoughtful strokes. Lavender swaying along the front gate. A bluebird in the corner. I just wanted you to see how it looks from the outside now, she said. It feels different. I thanked her. My voice cracked a little. Because it did look different. Not because the paint changed, but because the energy it wasn't heavy anymore. Wasn't silent in the way it used to be. Now, it held space. And space meant possibility. Later that night, I took out my sketchbook and tried to recreate her painting. My version wasn't perfect, but it didn't need to be. It was mine. Before bed, I sat on the porch with a mug of lemon ginger tea and wrote in my journal. There's a difference between being feared and being free. Ellen feared losing control. I feared never finding my voice. Now that I won't lose it again. The wind picked up slightly, and I let the breeze move through the house like a welcome guest. The truth was, I hadn't just removed someone from my home. I had made room for myself in it. That was the real revenge. Not cruelty, not silence, but peace. A few weeks after Ellen left, the house no longer smelled like tension. It smelled like lavender, sage, and cinnamon muffins. I didn't rush to fill every room. I didn't buy new furniture or repaint all the walls. I just let things breathe. Healing doesn't come with fanfare. It's slow, uneven, quiet. It shows up in the way your shoulders stop tensing when the phone rings, and how you linger in the morning sunlight a little longer, without guilt pressing against your chest. I began noticing those things. And then one morning, I registered for a community art show. Just a small one. Local artists. No pressure. I submitted a few pieces, hands in charcoal, a sketch of my garden gate, and the daisy drawing that had become my emotional compass. Callie, my art instructor, spotted the entry form and winked. You're doing it. Really doing it. I smiled. It doesn't have to be perfect. She nodded.
No.
It just has to be yours. And that's what this has all come down to. Ownership. Of space. Voice. Of the story I get to tell about myself now. Some days are harder than others. There are still moments I think about her, about Ellen. Not with longing, but with a strange kind of distance. Like remembering a language I no longer speak. She hasn't called since that last conversation. I don't expect her to. And honestly, I don't need her to. Closure didn't come from her apology. It came from me. From choosing peace over punishment. Boundaries over bitterness. And most importantly, choosing myself. A few days ago, I passed by a small bookstore downtown and saw a young woman helping her elderly mother step inside. She looked tired, but careful, like every move was being watched.
And I wondered,
Is she where I was? Is she slowly erasing herself? One polite nod at a time. I wanted to run in and tell her something.
anything. But I didn't.
Because it's not my story to interrupt. All I could do was hope quietly that she finds her own blank page one day. That she holds a pen long enough to write something that belongs only to her. That she learns early what I learned late. You are allowed to want more than survival. You are allowed to stop shrinking to fit someone else's version of love. And you are allowed to start over, even if it looks nothing like what others understand. This house, my house, no longer echoes with someone else's opinions. It hums with music I actually like.
It smells like herbs I planted.
It holds drawings and words and memories I'm not afraid to display.
And sometimes,
When I sit by the window with tea in one hand and my sketchbook in the other, I look at the daisy sketch framed in glass. The light still changes on it every hour. But now, that change feels comforting, like proof that everything evolves, even the things that once felt stuck,
even people.
especially people ever. And maybe that's the point. We don't always get the apology. We don't always get understanding or validation, but we can give those things to ourselves. We can start again, even from nothing, even when it feels late, especially when it feels late, because late is still now, and now is still yours.
So let me ask you something.
A question I wrote in my journal the day I signed the final papers.
The one I come back to every time I doubt myself.
What's yours? What parts of your life belong to you and only you? And what would happen if you started today? Quietly, slowly, without needing permission. Because you don't need permission, just a beginning, even if it's as simple as one blank page.